There are people in our world whom you may highly respect. They have these accolades, the awards, and all the trimmings of success. And then as you start following their work, you'll see the cracks in the armor that don't align with what was initially presented. They lack what I call a personal brand of integrity. What you see as their professional image isn't who they are at all. And I can say with confidence that this is not the story of today's guest. Jim Huling is the author of the #1 worldwide best-selling book, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, now in its second edition and translated into 16 different languages. He also leverages the wisdom he gained with 4 decades of corporate leadership, including Fortune 500 organizations, privately held companies, and more than a decade as the CEO of his company, recognized 4 times as one of the 25 best companies to work for in America. And if you've had the chance to interact with Jim, you'll know him as a masterful executive coach full of compassion, wisdom, and grace. And why I'm so convinced about his personal brand of integrity is it was almost 3 years ago that he appeared on this show. It was episode 14, folks. He was an early one. And as time went on, our podcast host and guest relationships evolved into friendships that were cultivated on LinkedIn. That led to another invitation to have him back on the show about a year ago. And today he's back for a three-peat appearance. Jim, welcome to the show.
Lisa, thank you. And I don't know if everybody can appreciate, but they can see our faces. And I'm ecstatic to be a third-time guest on what I and many people consider to be the best podcast out there. It's an auspicious day for me. Thank you. And I can't wait to talk about the topics we've got in mind for today.
Yeah, so as we were chatting before I pushed record, over the last 3 years, we've built this friendship, not in real life, not face to face. I don't think we've ever even met in person, but we've built it very publicly in the comments on our LinkedIn post. And so today we're going to take that conversation from that platform onto this show. And if you're a listener and you follow me on LinkedIn, Jim and I share this belief that I am also leading the charge to bring humanity back to business. So that leads us to the theme for today's show, which is leading with humanity, the courage to be fully present. And Jim, I'd like to start by getting your thoughts on what does leading with humanity mean to you, and why is it particularly important right now?
Gosh, thank you. What a great way to begin. And Lisa, without trying to be overly dramatic, I think I would say I don't know of any topic more important at this moment, and honestly, more on the minds of leaders today than this. And I'll set it up, my answer, by quickly reflecting. I am categorically the oldest person on this podcast, so I've been around a long time and in leadership a long time. And I remember well the days when you were just grateful to have a job and you thought your mission in that job was to simply do whatever you were told to do in the very best way you could and hope that your supervisor, manager, boss thought you were exceptional, and that would lead to success and all of that. In other words, the criteria for success was actually pretty simple in those days, but it had a major flaw because there was no element in that recipe for saying, are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you doing the work you were meant to do? Are you doing it with passion and with excellence and with an overarching desire to make a difference in the world? There was none of that was in the old recipe. The old recipe was really quite simple. And I think the tragedy of those years probably was that we thought that was enough. But thankfully, we as a species have really evolved. And I think we've really been helped by younger people flooding into the workforce now who come in with this different idea of, I don't mind working hard. And yes, I know there are expectations and I want to be excellent in what I do, but I'd also like to do something that matters. I'd like to feel like I'm not just trading hours for dollars, that, this is an equation where we're partners in this work. And this is a startling new reality that many longtime leaders are still finding a way to adjust to. But I think it's one of the greatest things that's ever happened, that we're closer now to saying it's our responsibility to create a workplace of purpose. It's our responsibility to say to every single individual, here's why what you do matters. Here's why without you, the whole process is lessened. Your contribution is important. I don't care if you're in accounts receivable or the mailroom or you're an administrative or whether you're the most senior executive in the company. We need all of us in order to be successful. Everything I just said is the last 5 years, 7 years of leadership evolution. But I'm so glad we're here because this is an entirely different transaction, relationship, partnership for leaders and the people who follow us than we've ever had before. And so my point being, it's the time of the human in the workplace. Lisa, I've said to you once before, and you were wonderful in your comments back to this, that I have this general belief that in the years past, we would go to work and we would only bring about 60% of ourselves into the office. And you've heard me say before, the other 40% of us would sit in the car waiting for the day to end. Right now, maybe that's an old example because a lot of us are working digitally now. I don't know, but the principle is the same. Very few of us bring our whole selves into our work. And if we say, well, why would that be? The reason is most of us don't feel that our whole self has been invited into the workplace. Most of us don't feel that we work for an organization or an individual who's really all that interested in our whole self. So we've accepted a false premise that whole self is not welcome in the workplace. And when you invited me today with this topic, I thought, well, here's another breakthrough podcast from Lisa, because we're going to talk about this very thing that frankly is creating turnover in its absence, that's creating disenfranchisement in its workforces, that's lowering productivity, lowering excellence, lowering growth, and also making the whole process of working for an organization less rewarding than it could be, right? But the changes are not monumental. They're actually quite simple. We just have to care enough about them, and we have to do the intentional things that change the way we lead, change the workplace in which we are part of, and open up what honestly can be a new era in the relationship between leaders and their teams.
Yes, Jim. And I think we are at the point where there is just so much potential and possibility. And as you were answering that question, some things that came through to me is the number of generations we have in the workforce. And I've sat in these rooms with these C-suite executives who are talking about the younger generation, plural, in a not so kind way. And it wasn't because they didn't appreciate them. They don't understand them. And then the discussion moved to, well, who do you think raised those people? It was the people who were sitting in the room. So if you look at why these younger generations are demanding this, it's the culture they were brought up in, it's the technology, it's how we raise them. But I am so glad we are here because we need to be having these conversations. We can't look to the person that we're interviewing without looking in the rearview mirror to look at where's our responsibility in it too. So I think we're going to have an amazing conversation. We could be here for hours on all kinds of side trails, but I do want to stay on the topic of humanity. And let's really just take it back to, I know you've coached hundreds, if not thousands, of leaders and teams. Could you maybe pull out an example for us of a leader you worked with who truly embraced humanity and presence in their leadership and the difference that maybe you saw it make?
Oh gosh, I love this question, and I will joyously call out a particular leader that I've worked with, and I'll start it off by saying, Lisa, I think every single person who came to work today has in their mind two questions that they hope they'll find an answer to before they quit their work and for the evening. And the two questions, and this is so me because they're simple and colloquially stated, so I hope it's all right, is, am I doing something today that matters? And the second question is much more heart-wrenching. Does anybody care?
Yes.
Now, I've just reduced the whole dialogue down to these two really simple questions, but I think they are at the heart of it. I don't think anybody is going into their work on this particular day joyously looking forward to doing something that absolutely doesn't matter. I don't think that exists. I don't think those two things can coexist. And for those who do come, for those who do bring excellence, for those who are excited as they start their work day that they have a chance to do something great, can do it if they feel like nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's watching. No, I'm alone. So it's a two parts of a whole, these two questions to me that represent auspiciously what I would say is the new era in leadership. I hope that's where we're going. I'll give you a really small example, though, of a person I know who greatly influenced me in this way. And his name was Dave Grissom. He was the CEO of the Marriott Corporation. I had 10 years as a lead consultant in the work that my company was doing for them around execution and around leadership. And one of the things I learned from him was, and you're going to be shocked, I think, every single day of a 30-year leadership tenure, he wrote a handwritten thank you note to someone in the organization. I just want to let that sink in. Yeah. Now, this is a person who was responsible for 250,000 employees across multiple continents. But in 30 years, he never missed a weekday without a handwritten note leaving his office on its way to someone else to say, we really appreciate what you're doing. We really appreciate having you. We're a better team because you're on this team. So I've picked this example particularly because he once said to me, Jim, it takes me 5 minutes to write a note. So out of my entire workday, if I don't have 5 minutes to say to someone, hey, thanks for all that you do. You're doing a great, I don't have 5 minutes. What am I doing that I don't have 5 minutes to express this? Because I think many leaders would say, oh, gosh, Jim, what are you talking about? You must not understand my role. I don't have 5 minutes to sit around and write a nice note. Really? Really? We don't? So his question back to me was, well, what am I doing that's so important that I don't have 5 minutes? But I picked this example intentionally because it's so tactical, so small. But Lisa, I want to finish the story by saying, if you got to know the people who were part of his time at that great company, one of the world's greatest companies ever, he is legendary. His notes. People have these notes pinned to the wall of their workplace. Some people have had them framed. They hang in their homes.
I got a
note from Dave Grissom, right? So if we're entering into an era in which the human factor is going to take its rightful place, equal or even greater to strategy and execution, will be what are we doing with the people we lead? Certainly, this ability to answer these two questions, to say, yes, you are doing something that matters, and here's why. And yes, somebody's noticing because I'm noticing, and here's a note from me to express it. I think that story sums up a very large topic in a beautiful and powerful way.
That is a beautiful story. And I think, it relates to it's not whether you have time, it's what is your priority. And that 1 5-minute investment, look at the impact it's made. Look, we're talking about it years later on a podcast as the one story that you're choosing to tell. Yeah. But it goes back to when we hire members of our team and we're all trying to work towards one common vision. When we start making them cogs in the machinery rather than the people that are going to get us to where we're going, it's such a lost opportunity. So, Jim, I think that really leads into the next place I want to go, because I could see listeners saying, oh, well, that was easy for him. He's got people to do things for him, right? And we have so many leaders that operate in this transactional style today, right? We've got people who are expected to do more with less. We've got boards looking down their over their shoulders. We've got a lot of pressure. We've got a lot of public visibility. I'm trying to climb the corporate ladder or short my career. But these leaders that operate in this transactional style, they're task focused, they're efficiency driven, they're measured by numbers and results. What's driving this shift, you think, towards transformational leadership? And how can you explain this distinction to the leaders that you coach?
I love this question because it's really a deep question, Lisa, as you know, because that's the kind of question you always ask.
Is that surprising?
Yeah, no, nothing about that surprises me at all. And so I'll give you a part A and part B answer, if I may. I think part A is there's still a lot of confusion. There's still a lot of leaders, even at the highest levels in companies, who many of whom hire me to coach them, and they start out by saying, I just don't understand what leadership's all about. The things I'm doing are not working. Things I was taught are no longer appropriate or applicable, and I'm not getting the results that I wanted. And I think my heart goes out to them, because this is not a case study kind of example. This is a human being feeling the pressure of solving a new equation, one that their previous life, previous tenure, their previous role models didn't prepare them for. And so we have to start in this very fundamental place that says you cannot drive extraordinary results. I'm just going to let the dust settle. Now, I'm a guy who wrote 2 books on driving extraordinary results.
Okay.
I'm trying to say it in a careful way. You cannot drive extraordinary results. Extraordinary results are the byproduct of a team of people who is fully and completely engaged. So what we've done in our world now is we've reversed the equation tragically. And we've thought, if I can just drive what people are doing, I can control what we're going to get. And there might be a degree of that that's true. I mean, let's be pragmatic. You and I, we're nothing if you and I aren't pragmatic. We're low on philosophy and big on action, making things happen,
Yes.
So yes, if you're really clear with people that they have to do a certain set of things, and that if they don't do them, or they don't do them at an appropriate level of excellence, they won't be able to hold the position they currently hold. We can do it. And that's easy. And it's seductive because it's so quick. But all that does is raise a team to a level of compliance. In other words, they will do if you scare them enough, they'll do exactly what you tell them to do. They'll do it exactly the way you said to do it, and they'll do it within the time frame that you told them to do it. They will comply if you use, for example, authority or fear as a driver. But here's the tragedy. That's all they'll do.
Yeah.
They will literally only go to where you said the line was, and they will stop right there and say, okay, I've done everything that you asked me to do, right? And those kinds of compliance-driven teams never produce anything extraordinary. But when we change the equation, and when we say, it's not about compliance, it's about a partnership, it's about you caring about the work we're doing, and I care about you. It's about making that part of it work. People will go from compliance all the way to commitment. And teams that are committed produce extraordinary results. It's as simple and as complex as that. And so I just think too many people have settled for the low bar of compliance. They don't know how to solve the engagement equation. They don't know how to give people a sense of purpose. They don't know how to lift them with a vision that makes them want to be part of something. And I'm not being critical. I'm just commenting. Well, that's where we are. So they fall back to the lowest common denominator. The lowest common denominator is do exactly what I told you to do. And if you don't, not good things will happen. That will drive a certain level of result. But that's not the era we're in now. And I'll finish this little bit too long diatribe, I think, by closing with this idea. Guess who will not accept that as the environment in which they want to spend their lives? The youngest, most talented, brightest people joining the workforce. They're like, this is all you got? You tell me exactly what to do and I go do it and I'm okay?
No.
I'm going somewhere else. And then flip that over. The brilliant companies in our world today, the brilliant leaders in our world today are the ones who are saying, how do we create a magnet style environment? Instead of how do we find people, they're saying, how do we draw people to us? Well, we create a culture of meaning. We create a culture of growth and development. We invest in you like you invest in us. We take the time to get to know who you are and help you with whatever development aspirations you may have. Those kinds of companies, I don't want to be too bold. I think in 5 to 10 years' time, those will be the only companies that are left, because the absence of talent will starve the other organizations of the resource they need to do it. They'll eventually come to the place where they know what we're talking about today. But I hope we're offering people an opportunity to think about some things that could be implemented by the end of today if they chose to do it.
Yes, and I think you're right. I think companies are going to, if they don't choose to go there, they're going to be forced to go there. And This is one thing where my heart, Jim, is, one of the areas that I work in is helping companies create cultures where people want to work. And when you made that statement of we can't, what was it again? We can't drive results.
Right. Results are a byproduct of people who are passionately engaged in what they do.
All right. And I would also say culture is a byproduct
Of
of
course.
that as well. And what I see with culture is companies come in and say, okay, we're going to have a mission statement. We're going to put it on the wall. These are the values you will believe. And then people are left there. That's why the culture work that has been done up till now has been so difficult. And you just hit the nail on the head with that. So that's another conversation for another
I love
time.
that. I love
But
that.
it was just like, oh, this
Oh
is
yeah.
why it's not working.
Do you
Yeah.
mind if I put a little pin in that really
Go
quickly? That
ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm so want to say, I had 14 wonderful years working for Franklin Covey. I still
Mhm.
think the greatest company on earth, and Dr. Stephen Covey, I probably learned more from and more of who I am because of him. So one of the things he taught us in the days in which he was still speaking was this simple 4-word equation for creating engaged teams.
Mhm.
And the 4 words, look how dramatically I've set this up, Lisa.
Now I'm ready.
The 4 words are no involvement, no commitment.
Mm,
Literally said, write this down, underline it, keep it with you all the
mhm,
time. No involvement, no commitment. Well, think of the examples you just chose: the making of a vision statement, the crafting of
mhm,
company values, the cultural rules that we live by, all those things. 99% of all those endeavors consists of the people at the top having a meeting, crafting a something, and then rolling it out to everybody else.
yeah,
But the crazy part is when we roll it out, people had no involvement whatsoever,
mhm.
but we expect high adoption and high commitment. It's literally insanity the way the
It
system.
is. It is.
The person on the front line has as much to say about integrity and respect and
Mm,
honor and empathy as the CEO does, sometimes more. Right? So
mhm.
what are we doing when we don't give them a voice? I'm not saying everything should be put to a vote and you can't make any decisions unless everybody wants to. I'm not trying to say anything ridiculous, but I'm trying to say something that really applies all the time. When people have no involvement, they tend to have no commitment.
Mhm.
And the key to changing that, it can be done by 5 o'clock today. Simply look for ways to give them some involvement, to say, here's what we're planning to do next quarter. What do you guys think? Is this a
Mhm.
good plan? Will this work? Do you see anything we're not seeing? But it takes humility to ask those questions because the tendency as leaders is to say, hey, we'll do all the thinking, you just do all the doing,
Yes.
and then I'm being partially sarcastic, but I think a lot of places run that. So here's the key to that: involvement drives commitment,
Yeah.
and commitment is the main thing we're lacking at this moment from the people that we lead.
Really is. It really is. So as we look at this, some people might question whether investing too much in individual growth, personal development, and well-being is kind of frivolous, thinking that it distracts from productivity. How do you respond to that type of skepticism, Jim? Because you're an executive coach, right? Are we
Yes.
are we dealing with personal development? Are we dealing with individual growth? It's all about the company, isn't it?
What a beautiful question. And you ask it exactly the way it gets asked.
Uh-huh.
I know you've been in those, say, and you coach your own set of
Yeah.
CEOs. I'll tell you the most interesting thing to me about this question is number one, let's be compassionate towards executives, saying we are asking them to offer something that was never offered to them. I think we
Mhm.
missed this point. I think we
Yes.
fast forward to 2025 and we think everybody was born this morning and we came into a world, but this is not the truth. So much of the time when I bring a very empathetic style to executive coaching, I'm remembering that I'm asking a leader to give something, invest in something, do something that was never given to them.
Hmm.
So, okay, that helps me start in a more compassionate place. And then, secondly, because of that, they don't know how to do it, Lisa. I'm smiling as I say it
Hmm.
because it's a little funny, but my heart aches because the only approach people know to these topics is an institutional approach.
Hmm.
So they gather a small group of people. Maybe they hire a consultant. They have an initiative. They give it a brand name. T-shirts and balloons begin to appear around the office, and they think, okay, we're really doing this. And all the people on the front line are like, yeah, here we go again.
Exactly.
Because we take an institutionalized approach to an initiative that is inherently personal.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we reversed that? And I'm just going to say this. I don't know who's driving their car, listening to you and me, rolling their eyes. I don't know. But what if you said, for example, I'm going to spend a reasonable amount of time with every direct report I have. And in that conversation, I want to know something personal about them. I want to know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what motivates them. I want to know what their aspirations are. And I want to agree before that brief meeting is over on one or two things I could be doing to support where they are trying to go with their life. Now, remember, nothing I said was about not being productive or not being effective. I didn't say anything about that, but I'm saying it's sort of like the Dave Grissom story. I'm going to carve out 20 minutes for a meeting, and I want to know these three things because I'm committed to helping you achieve and do and become everything you want while you're here contributing to our company. So it's the opposite of the institutionalized approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's the hyper personal approach, but it's not hard and it doesn't take very long and it's incredibly effective. The moment you begin, word starts to spread and things are changing and people feel differently almost from the moment you begin. So that would be my best advice.
Yeah. And I think in that too, Jim, what I'm taking away from our conversation up to this point is we all want to be seen, heard, and known.
Yeah.
We all want to be seen, heard, and known because when we feel that, then we feel like we are valued. We feel like we have a reason to be here. We feel like, I remember one time, and I can't even remember the source of the story, but this was back when Chick-fil-A still had their coleslaw, which I'm still terribly upset they got rid of, by the way, anybody out there. But they were talking about, this was back in the days before all the automation, the person who was in charge of shredding the carrots, right? Like that was their one job, shredding carrots. And that person was made to feel like the way they shredded carrots, the fact that they did it, that one job was so critically important. And you think, it's carrots, shredding them. What's the deal? I'll tell you, if that wasn't done the right way, the slaw didn't come out. And here we are years later, again, still talking about the coleslaw, right? But I think that's the whole gist of it, is we all want to believe and feel that we matter to someone else. And so I think that's really the essence of what you're talking about.
Oh, it's beautiful. You said it so perfectly. And we started this conversation today, with my humble offering of two questions everybody tries to answer. Am I doing something that matters?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. And does anybody care?
Yeah.
Well, you just illustrated that perfectly,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not an abstraction to say that a person can come to believe that the perfect shredding of the carrots. I'm nostalgic as I think about that fabulous coleslaw, at least.
Yes.
And the preparation of that component of a world-class meal matters. That matters. I can take pride in that. I can feel differently about myself because of how I do it. But I don't get any of that in isolation. I need community. I need partnership with my leader. I need a leader who really does care.
Mm-hmm.
And who's not simply going to say, "Hey, Lisa, you're 0.02 behind our normal production schedule. Can you pick it up?" There's a time and place for that. I understand. But if that's the only feedback I ever get, I'm like, okay, nobody really cares. So it is possible to turn these things around. And small things, I'd still think today the key to the big is the small. When we do small things that are chosen intentionally, we drive big results. Mm-hmm. And when we try to drive big results in isolation, we never succeed because we didn't pay attention to the small things that were actually the drivers. In our book, we call that lead measures and lag measures, right? So we don't know what the right lead measures are. We can't just leap to the lag measures and have the results we want. Anybody listening to you and me today could become a different leader by tomorrow morning by simply applying the small things that are human oriented that we've offered even already at this point.
Now, when we look at human oriented, and I think your point about leaders today have never had this modeled for them, I think that is a key point.
Mm.
And so before we start getting down on these people who have never seen it, who haven't had the training for it, and we're asking them really, trust and psychological safety are the key pillars to building these human centered cultures. So, what are some practical strategies or habits that leaders can adopt to nurture trust, to nurture psychological safety in their teams, Jim?
I love that. Somewhere, Abraham Maslow is smiling, because here we are today, still standing on that incredible
Mhm.
foundation. And it's a great truth, Lisa. People who don't feel safe don't engage. People who don't feel safe are not creative or
Mhm.
are not innovating with what they're doing. They don't feel they have the space to be able to do that. But I can tell you three things right now that anybody in the world could do, and you don't even have to be great at them. You just have to start and then get better. And the very first one is listening. It's just to listen. You think about leaders. I was a leader. When you've been a leader, we know you spend most of your time talking when you're a
Mhm.
leader. You're mostly telling other people what you think.
Yeah.
So if we reverse the equation and you intentionally spent time listening, there's no leader in the world that can't find 15 minutes a week to hear from someone who works for them.
Mhm.
Nobody can do that. And even if you say, well, what difference can that make? You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed at what being seen, being heard, feeling back. So listening is a key. I think secondly, involvement, which we've touched on already today. There should not be a significant initiative that you ask a team to engage in without a moment of saying, here's what we're thinking of. What do you guys think? Why would we do it any other way? Why would we say, rush into battle, and if you survive, I'll tell you why we were fighting?
Yeah.
Nobody would do that, right?
No.
Nobody, only the survivors will get to know the great secret of why we're doing. But the rest of you just trust us, go. It just doesn't work that way anymore. And then last of all, and I realize it's lofty language, but I think everybody wants to do something toward a purpose they can believe
Mhm.
in. Everybody wants that. Nobody wants to do meaningless work all day, right? But it's hard sometimes when the leader doesn't see the real value in what you're doing and sends you the conscious or the unconscious signal that, hey, you're just a really small part of this big operation. Please try to pick it up if you will. And it doesn't take long to make each individual understand what we said already on this podcast. Everybody plays a part.
Mhm.
Everybody is needed. Everybody's contribution can be valued. It's not hard. But until we do that, I think we'll still struggle with the things we're struggling with today.
Yes, I think all of that just brings that to a point of where we are at a point where we need to change. We need to make this a priority. Um, and when we're looking at humanity, Jim, we also have to bring ourselves to it. So I'm going to do something I haven't done in the past two episodes that we've done together. Is I'm going to get a little bit personal. All right.
Please.
So we often hear that to lead others well, we must first lead ourselves. I would love to know what you do to personally practice presence. Are there daily rituals or habits that you have to anchor you in the ability to be
What a
present?
great, what a Lisa McGuire question. That's
And that's a
that's
Lisa McGuire
totally,
question.
I literally love that. So let me say really quickly in the beginning that I fundamentally believe no team ever rises above the example set by the leader. I think
Mm,
leaders are the standard setters. That's part of the job. Yes, that's heavy. Yes, that's a responsibility. I get it. I've lived with it my whole life. But we can't sidestep the fact that the level of excellence we demonstrate, the level of compassion and excellent and desire for excellence that we illustrate by what we do is the unmistakable high watermark for the team. And the team has every right to say, well, Lisa, you only get to 7 every day. So 7 must be what excellence is, right?
mhm,
So 8, 9, and 10, you never go there. So I shouldn't have to go there. I think that's a valid point. So
mhm.
if you want to lift a team, you start by lifting yourself. So 3 things come to mind right away. First of all, is I try, if I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And more than once, Lisa, I have said, you will have that today. And at 11:59:59, I'm hitting the send button. I've barely made it, but I'm going to do it. If I told you I was going to do it, I'm going to do it. And as pragmatic as that is, I think that creates a foundation of safety that people can then feel they can rely on.
Mm-hmm.
Second, I'll hurry along. I think I'm slowing down too much. The second thing that I really value is, do I know who you really are? You paid me a wonderful compliment when you opened this podcast, and it literally almost choked me up where I couldn't start this morning. That because you mentioned being who I appear to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's a wonderful Latin phrase, esse quam videre, which says to be rather than to appear. So in other words, my second tenet is esse quam videre, be what you say you believe in rather than appearing to believe what you say you believe in. So if you have a set of values and one of those values is integrity, then always tell the truth. If you have a value that says compassion is one of your values, then pause a moment and have some compassion for what's happening. But whatever you choose, point number 2 is be what you appear to be. And then third is, I love this old expression. I didn't invent it. You can't be what you can't see.
Okay.
In other words, be the person. Have a vision for your own life. Where are you trying to go? Are you running in a circle, waiting for retirement or something else to change or whatever? Have you reached that point? Well, then, okay, but that's the team you're going to lead. That team is going to be right about at that level. So why not say, you know what? How do I create the next great chapter of my life? What am I moving toward? I think everybody who works for us has the right, respectfully, to say, hey, Lisa, what are you striving for? What's your vision? Who are you trying to become? I think that's a wonderful leadership question that may challenge us, because old school people don't get to ask those kind of questions. New school people need to ask those questions, because that lets them say, okay, you're somebody I want to follow. You're somebody who I want to emulate. I want to use your example. So those 3 things are quick and easy and simple, but I shouldn't have said easy. They're not easy to do. They're simple to do. And the sooner we start doing those things, I think those are just 3 places any leader can begin.
Yes, and the question, who are you trying to become? I'm thinking of some of the people that I've worked with in the past. If I would ask them that question, and I know many of the people that I work with, when if I ask that question, they don't know.
That's right.
And I remember one session, I specifically asked that question, Jim, and the pause was, who am I supposed to be? Right? Like they've never thought of that before. And this is the script that I often talk about that we run by. So many people don't choose who they want to be. They're following along, who am I supposed to be, right? Which breaks my heart, just gets into that. But as we talk about hearts breaking and being a little bit more vulnerable, I know many of our listeners will admire your thoughtful and genuine posts that you have on LinkedIn. How do you bring this genuine presence into your writing, these digital interactions, to make them feel more human and meaningful?
Wow, Lisa. Now you've really touched me now, because you're the only person that's ever even asked me that question. And that's just such a Lisa McGuire thing. So I'll say, first of all, I have a practice of wanting to say something helpful every day. And I've got a pretty long unbroken record of putting a thought onto LinkedIn every single day. And I don't say that with any hubris, but I will reveal to you my ritual is, I usually start on the back porch of my house. I live on a very small lake, and so I have this wonderful setting, to go out there as the sun's coming up with my coffee and think about these thoughts. But I start by saying, what could I say today that would help the greatest number of people in the most profound way? What is it? Now, I'm not trying to be Charlton Heston with the 2 tablets. I'm not trying to change the world with one soundbite. I don't have any of those aspirations, nor do I believe I can. But my simple prayer is, what could I say today that would be the most helpful to the greatest number of people? And then I just pause. I just wait. I wait for something. I wait for something to come. And some days, Lisa, it feels like the heavens open and I've got this incredible message and I can't wait to share it. And other days I feel like I'm sort of putting something together in my mind. It's not always a miracle, but I'm faithful to the practice of saying,
Mm-hmm.
how could I do that? And then more often than not, the response, like you kind words you've just said is, um, wow, that really helped me today.
Mm-hmm.
Later in the day, I'll read someone who said, I don't know how, Jim, but that's exactly what I needed to hear today. And that's how I know I've been of service
Mm-hmm.
in that sort of digital practice of ministry, whatever you want to call it, of mine. But it's as inauspicious as that. What could I say today that would be the most helpful to the greatest number of people? And that one practice has brought me several years of uninterrupted new ideas for postings. And I hope, you've been a kind person to comment. I hope others have found those to be the same.
Yes, very inspiring. But I also want to pull out something that people may not see as business related, which I'm having lots of conversations right now about, does this content belong on LinkedIn or this doesn't really belong here? But it is not uncommon for me to see in my Jim Huling feed a picture of you in the gym, CrossFit, like lifting a lot of weight.
Thank
And
you.
I will mention that, you and I are not spring chickens anymore, right? So maybe share a little bit about what inspires you to post your physical training regime on LinkedIn, and what type of reaction do you get to that?
What a surprising and wonderful question. Thank you for asking me that. Well, first of all, may I just say I am people may not believe this. I am an off the charts introvert. So
Mhm.
there is a version of Jim that would die before he'd rather just share anything so intimately personal. But I do it because it is one more way of being rather than appearing. In other
Mhm.
words, I'm
Yeah.
going to spend my day talking about following through, being trustworthy, having a vision for your life, striving for excellence in what you do. If I'm going to talk about those things, I need a way to let people know that it's not just talk.
Mhm.
And so the surest way I have to do that is to say, well, here's an example. I don't easily have videos of me interacting as a dad or as a husband or
Mhm.
as a friend. It's kind of hard to say, hey, Lisa, I know we're having this intimate conversation. Would you
Could we
pause and
pause?
look in the camera? We don't get to do that. So it is one of the few places where I can, in a simple way, say, here I am doing what I talk about doing and
Mhm.
hope that it carries with it a message. And if I can close with this, I'll say, the most surprising thing to me is by far the posts about working out outpace the
Mhm.
ones that have leadership insight in them. I mean, I just find it's funny, isn't it? But I think it's an example that doing is more powerful than talking. Being is more powerful than espousing a belief. And so people get to see that part of me and say, wow, at 70 years old, you picked up 400-pound dumbbell this week, dumbbell barbell this week. That doesn't, I don't care if anybody thinks more of me as an athlete. They shouldn't actually, but if they say, wow, he really does the things he's talking about,
Mhm.
then I think, okay, this is a valuable addition. And I will fight my introversion to post a video of myself when is not my most glamorous appearance, and other people do things far greater than I do. So, but I'm, lift more weight or run faster or whatever. But I'm willing to do this so it gives you a window into my life,
Mhm.
a tiny one, to say, wow, the things you talk about, you're actually striving to do as well.
Yes, and the being versus appearing. This will not be the last time you hear it. I'm going to borrow that and absolutely give you attribution for that, Jim. I love the distinction of that, the differentiation of that. But I also want to call out why those posts are getting so much attention. And this is where I lean in so much into authenticity. You become human and relatable to everyone who is going through that, going through their LinkedIn feed. Oh, he works out. Oh, I don't work out, but I wish I could. Look at him. Look at what he's doing. Isn't this amazing? Oh, I could never do that, but look at the courage he has. Like all of those things are going through our minds as we're looking at this. So this relatability factor is so discounted, And so I want to applaud you for having the courage to do it because I understand I'm an introvert as well, maybe
Yeah.
not as much as I used to be. Um, but I think there is value and expertise is no longer going to be enough. We're going to have to become more human, and you're doing a beautiful job doing it with those posts.
That means the world to me for you to say those kind words. And do you mind if I just tag on a tiny
Go
point
ahead. Yeah,
for you to consider
absolutely.
that I really think that this whole idea of letting people, I mean, I would like to start over. Naturally, in our world, walls are built.
Hmm.
I'm a CEO, you're a manager. I'm a CEO, you're a frontline person. The
Hmm.
walls are all around us. I'm younger than you, I'm older than you. I went to a different school than you went to. The walls are there no matter what. So a leader can't afford to say, I never build any walls. I'm an open and engaging leader. I never build any walls. And I would say, I'm so sorry to tell you, but there are walls all around you. So, in other words, the work of a leader today has to be intentionally bringing down those walls. So, and I know you are so kind to watch my post, but you will have seen more than one post where I failed on the lift. I
Hmm.
couldn't get the barbell up. I have a video where I fell down trying to get the barbell up, right? And believe me, I thought a minute before I posted it, but I thought, this is part of the journey as well. You need to see that I tried to lift it and I
Hmm.
couldn't. And next week I'll try again and maybe I'll do it. You need to see that part of it as well. So the point I'm hoping I'm making is that the more we become a real living, breathing human being to the people who follow us,
Hmm.
with our own hopes and our own dreams and our own insecurities and our own failures and our own triumphs, the more they see the three-dimensional real version of us, I think the more they're willing to follow us, the more they feel they can relate to us. Or if we have to make a hard decision, the more they will give us the benefit of the doubt. We get all those benefits from the simple willingness, as you said beautifully already, to be seen in
Hmm.
all of our humanity as leaders. Let's drop the robes of executive leadership. Let's just drop them on the floor and not pick them back up. And
Yes.
let's walk and talk and eat in the lunchroom and be with other people as a real regular person who just happens to have a different level of responsibility and a different title.
Mm.
That may be the best thing we've said today.
Yeah, and I'm just letting that settle in. That feels so amazing. So amazing. So, Jim, for leaders who deeply resonate with this conversation today, still feel hesitant and unsure, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to give them some words of encouragement or final wisdom to help them begin to bring more humanity and presence into their leadership. What would you like to leave them with?
Oh, I love that. Well, the answer comes to me immediately when you ask me the question because I think about this every day. And Lisa, maybe I'm in the legacy stage of my career, so I'm more inclined to this thought. But I would say to everybody, the day will come when you will be absolutely clear on how you want to be remembered.
Hmm.
And I'm getting emotional when I say this to you. And when that day comes, all of your Performer of the Year awards and the quarterly bonus and the reserved parking space and the bigger office, none of that will matter at all. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those things. Those are great things, and everybody enjoy them if you've got them. But they are not what you will value at the end. At the end, you will value, did I make a difference? You know that quote from Steve Jobs? He says, make a dent in the universe.
Yeah.
I love this quote because to me it's so visual. I imagine myself one day being able to say in the last moment, you see that dent right there? That's my dent. That's what I did with my life. I
Hmm.
helped those people. I invested in those people. I listened when they needed a listening ear. I lifted them up with whatever knowledge and wisdom I had. No matter how I did it, that's my dent. I own that dent. That is what you're going to want to know. That's what you're going to want to be true about your life is not what you achieved, but how you spent it, what you did with what you had. And so if I could just say to every leader, just once a day, just picture that moment. It's the last day. We're all standing around talking about your impact. What do you want us to be able to say? He was a leader who cared.
Yeah.
She was a leader who lifted us up when times were troubled. She was somebody I thought I could trust. That's what you're going to want. So start today to build that legacy. And then when that last day comes, you will be so happy that you did.
Yes, I fully support and right along in step with you on that, Jim. What do you want to have so you have no regrets in your life? And I think that's a great place for us to wrap up today. So
I
thank
love
you
it.
so much for sharing your insights, your heart, your presence with us today. How can listeners best connect with you? And if they want to continue this meaningful conversation, perhaps in coaching, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Lisa, thank you for letting me close with that. And
Yeah.
you've heard me say, I feel today I'm doing the work I was really born to do. This one on one executive coaching is a place where I'm thriving, and I feel I am making a real difference. And I try to keep it incredibly simple. So my best presence is on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Just look on LinkedIn. I post every day, comment on something if you like, but on my profile on LinkedIn, there's a link to set up an introductory session with me. And I would love to do it. Why not? Why not make a start? Have a conversation, see if I'm a person who can create a safe space and a learning space to help you get to the next level of your own leadership and your own team. If so, I'd be honored to do it. And Lisa, I just thank you for letting me share your great platform. I suppose the most listened to podcast of all the people I know is yours. And so I'm also honored by extension to have been able to say a word or two to all the people who'll be listening to this today. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Once again, our conversation did not disappoint, and thank you for being part of the show. All right. So if you're looking for direction and you could use support of an executive coach, you can see why Jim Huling has been so highly successful in his career, and so many people are just raving fans, and I joined the ranks of that too. And if you haven't already, I invite you to go back and visit episode 119 called Overcoming Hurdles on a Journey to Reinvention, where Jim and I have a great conversation. And way back, episode 14, Bring Your Whole Self to Work and Life with Jim and his daughter, Sarah Huling Tendler. That was a great conversation as well. So go back and check those out. And for those of you who are feeling stuck and looking for direction, I invite you to check out my upcoming program, Next Steps to the New You. It helps take the steps to discover your zone of genius while learning the tools to get out of your own way. And the link for that and all of Jim's contact information will be in the show notes. So until next week, go chase your passion. It will reveal your purpose and lead you to discovering your legendary self. We'll see you then.